All right, everybody, welcome back to the 42284 podcast. I'm back with Jeremy. We've got Kyle. We've got Mr. Kevin Alexander back. Well, we talked about maybe hitting on McKelvy a little bit, and we've got to surely you've got some good McKelvy stories. I know I've got one, and I'll tell it. So when we went down there, we tended McKelvy's old farm for a little while, cut some hay on it and stuff, and McKelvy was already. I think he was having some vision trouble, and he stayed in the house a lot, but he wanted to get out and help. Wanted to get out and help. So Larry, his son-in-law, hooks a disc up to their big 70-20 Alice, and McKelvy's going to disc in bottoms because we was going to sow them in grass. And you've probably heard this, and this is when he hung the stump with the disc. Of course, he had a 12-foot disc behind the 70-20 Alice, and it didn't know it was back there. And the stump did.
Really?
He brought the stump. It was an old stump. He brought the stump out of the ground with him. I think maybe higher lipped some stuff on the disc that Larry had to, but he said, confound, somebody moved the stump on me.
Yeah.
McKelvy's your mom's dad.
Yeah, his name was McKelvy Woosley. He's my mom's dad, and he lived down there in Big Reedy. McKelvy was a great guy.
At some time or another, and I don't know that I've ever asked you this, but at some time or another, McKelvy about had to have some pretty good pull somewhere, because I know from working on the road department that road down there was an A route road from 185 to about his milk barn, and the rest of it was a C route road.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the routes and the state roads are A, B, C labeled, right? By
priority.
Priority. Yeah, priority. A is like your interstates and stuff.
A takes priority during snow and ice.
Your major highways, and C's are the small Sunny Point roads, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And that was considered an A route road from 185 to somewhere out around his milk barn somewhere. And I've always assumed, because when he milked cows,
I bet it was the dairy.
When he milked cows,
you had to get
the milk out.
Yeah, I bet it was the dairy.
He was, Papa. That's what we called him. He's pretty connected. He really was pretty connected. He was, of course, he worked for the State Department there several years too.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he worked for the State Department until Louis Nunn came in. They all lost their job.
Back before it was Merritt.
68, I believe, was the year.
You're saying State Road Department?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he worked when they did the watershed lakes, because I had Estel Keith told me one time, but he was working with, and of course, Papa lived close enough he could just drive home for lunch. He was just on him all the time. Said, "Come on, eat lunch with me." He said, "My wife's a real cook. Confound, come on home. You don't have to stay out here and eat." So he just on him, and Estel, he told me, he said, "Nah, I ain't gonna go. You go home and have lunch." Finally, he worked him down one day, and he went home. My grandma, she made this, it's called pickled meat, is what it was. Basically, it's just kind of like jowl type bacon.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, you cook it up, and we called it pickled meat, but it would just be like a white, looked like bacon, but it was white, crunchy. He said, Esther told me one time, said, "I'm telling you what," said, "that's about the best stuff I ever ate in my life." But Papa he was a good guy. He was always real involved with things. He was a very community-minded person. And he had his way about things. He had his way about things. And if you went with him somewhere to do something, he expected you to do it. If we went to Lavanna Melinda's up there and he's gonna dig up the potatoes and stuff, you didn't throw anything. You laid stuff where it's supposed to go. You don't bruise the potatoes. I reckon he just about tore Jason's end up one time for cutting dry with a potato.
So what was your?
It's a confound.
What was his wife's name? Your grandmother?
Frida.
What was her maiden name?
She was a Childress from down at Reedyville.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is not far.
No, she was from down there. She was, down there where Region Reedyville Road comes out on 185. There's a white house there, kind of. It's a real pretty old house, been fixed up now. Right, that's where my great grandmother and great grandfather lived.
Really? Okay.
Yep, right there. And they got married about 44, and moved to Big Reedy. Papa told me, he said the Depression hit in when he was a little boy, And he said it never left for years. You know, they just lived, and that's why they
adapted.
That's why they were. People would trade on stuff. They didn't. You know, somebody might have this, somebody might have that. He told me stories about, you know, that they just kind of had to pull a little money together to pay the preacher and different things. He said it was a hard time, but now he's a very proud guy too. And he was interested in the things he was interested in. He's interested in them all the way. Now, type of guy that, you know, if you want to have a conversation with him, it was going to last a while. You know, I remember one time McKelvy Woosley lived up here at Shrewsbury. That's Eric's dad.
Yeah.
He come over. McKelvy Gordon, the type of guy, you know, when he's done talking, he's done talking. And Brandon kind of alluded to this a minute ago. My granddad, he had macular degeneration. So he had virtually the last few years of his life, he didn't have any front vision. He just had a little bit of peripheral. So when you come in that door, he'd cock that head around to see who you are. Ooh, what you doing? You know, so anyway, I was in there one day, and he kept that house, or Joanne, Larry, and them, because of him, they kept that house hot. You might go over in the middle of the summertime, he's full Dickie's wardrobe out, because you know, he had skin cancer there by the time I was born, and he just about didn't think he'd make it. He had melanoma. They cut his neck up and stuff, but he pulled out of it. So the rest of his life that I knew him, he's long sleeve shirts and straw hats, and he did his best to try to, you know, have longevity in his life. But I reckon old Merrill Gordon rolled in over there that day, and I got there after Merrill Gordon did. He's sitting there on the couch, and Papa, he'd just get to talking. And Merrill Gordon, he'd talk along, you know, and I guess it just hit Merrill Gordon that he's going to leave. And of course, Papa, he just talking just like I am right now. So Merrill Gordon just gets up and goes out the door and hits the road.
Left him.
And Papa and I'm just sitting there.
And he couldn't see to see.
He couldn't see it. He was just kept a talking, and I'm sitting there in the chair, and I'm not sure where Joanne was at. But anyway, finally, I don't know if he didn't hear the door shut or anything, because he kept on going with that story. And finally, he said something, and Merrill Gordon never answered. And he said, Kevin? I said, yeah. He left, Papa. He said, well, I guess he's done talking to me. And I'm telling you, Merrill Gordon was already in the car pulling out. He was already gone. But, yeah, just a very interesting. I tell you something he was really interested in when I was a kid growing up. Pretty bright man to have a 7th grade education. He could figure in his head, you know. But he was
he's timberman, so.
Oh yeah,
he talk about measurements and fractions.
Yes.
And,
Well, of course, I only knew him way later on in life. I mean, they, you know, dairy farmer, timberman.
They had crops and stuff too. His farm run from way back in there in Butler County, all the way across 185. It went all the way over there to. You know where Matthew Lindsay lives down there. It went over in there.
Yeah,
and across them bottoms and stuff.
Which we tended that field up on the hill one year back there in the back.
Yeah. He loved politics. Now he was a diehard Democrat. So I grew up in a house. My dad's a Republican. My mom's a Democrat. Everything's cool. You know, we didn't fuss. Brian gets ready to register to vote. And he's all tore up because he's going to go R. And Mom told him, said, well, you just need to go tell Papa what you're doing.
Sit down and break it
She
to him.
set him up. didn't she?
Sit down and
Mama
break it
threw
to
him under the bus.
He was tore up from what I understand. He finally broke down, went over there and told him. And we all, I don't know if Jason did that, but when I got ready to register to vote, I went and talked to him. I told him, I said, it's 1993, I guess, when I registered to vote. And I told him, I said, I registered Republican, Papa. And he, you know what? He didn't say. You know what he said? He said, "I'm glad that you got registered to vote, because he said you need to." He said, "Person needs to vote." He said, "You can't complain and fuss and gripe if you don't vote."
That's true.
But I'll never forget this. He was a prognosticator, I guess, Nostradamus. So I'm at his house. I'm telling you, I remember this night. It was 1984, and we was watching Channel 13. Peter Jennings, I believe, was on there. They're bringing in the results for the congressional races. Papa was a D. Huddleston man. That was his guy. He was running for U.S. Senate, and Mitch McConnell was running against him. And D. Huddleston was going to most people thought he was going to win, and McConnell slipped in there and won the race. And we sat there, and he said, "Confound." He said, "He's just young enough to be in there a while." He called that one. 40 years later, he's still the senator for Kentucky. And that's what he said. Said, "Confound," said he's young enough to be in there a while. I don't know.
So spinning off of y'all having to go talk to McKelvy about your registration. When I was little, probably before I ever knew what the difference in Democrat and Republican even was, Kyle's grandpa, we'd be down there for something, and of course he was a diehard Democrat, and my grandpa a diehard Republican. And so Kyle's grandpa would give me 50 cents to be a Democrat, and then tell me to go tell my papa. And Dad said he'd just laugh and he'd say, "Boy, that'll cost old Warren $1." So I'd go tell Papa that I was a Democrat, and Papa would say, here's you $1 to be a Republican."
Quit saying that stuff.
Yeah.
But now McKelvy would always support good people.
Yes.
One of McKelvy's best friends in the whole world was a sitting Republican that served for 25 years or whatever it was. Yeah. I mean,
and he was,
when it come to local stuff, especially.
Yeah,
McKelvy.
He
wasn't one of those people that just went in there and closed his eyes.
He voted for the person.
He voted for the person.
Voted for the person, not the party.
Exactly. I'll give you an example of that too. Was Larry Forgy. Larry Forgy had some ties down in Butler County. You know, when he was going to run for governor, and I remember him talking to us, and he said, "Now, that's the way I'm going to go on this." And he said, "You know, he's not a Democrat, but that's the way I'm going to go." But yeah, and
well,
you know
remember
what?
our rep here. It's been 20 years ago, I guess. Our state rep. Our congressional rep. Ron Lewis. When Ron was running the first time, McKelvy got which back in those days, Sunfish and Big Reedy was kind of known as a bigger Democratic precinct in the county compared to the rest of the county. Not that there's ever been a lot of Democrats, but compared to the rest of the county. Ron's running for U.S. Congress, and he knows, a lot of the Republicans, and he says, "Hey, can you get me in, with some of the Democrats in that area?" And McKelvy puts that together, and they come up to Dad's shop, and Ron comes up and introduces himself and was very personable to people and ended up winning that. I'm not saying Evans County pulled him through, but I'm just saying my point is he supported people that he felt like would do a good job for the community. And
he was he was always very interested in that kind of stuff. Work was everything. He cared nothing. Now, we talked about Dad a while ago about sports. We love sports. Now, confound, he didn't care nothing about sports.
Now, I have heard one story about him in sports.
Rick Pitino?
No.
Rick
when
Pinto.
Steven was playing basketball, I've heard Larry tell this, and when Steven was playing ball, they had a ball game somewhere. I don't know where it was at, and it was on the radio, and McKelvy's listening to it, and the other team, the guys talking about, man, they're being rough on Smith out here on the floor, yada, yada. And McKelvy starts, like, I reckon, getting his coat on. And Larry says, "Where are you going?" He said, "Load up. We're going up there." Wherever this ball game's at, that's where we're headed to.
I think, I'm pretty sure that, like, maybe it was Jason's last game of high school basketball. I think he went to that game, and I think he got a little fired up, because Jason was kind of the big dog for our team that year, and he didn't want nobody messing around. Of course, him and Jason pretty tight. Because when Jace graduated high school, he's the only one of us didn't go to college. He immediately went to the logwoods, and he worked for Papa, and he worked with Cotton Booth and those guys, and he's got some great stories from that.
Yes, he does. I've heard a lot of those too.
But yeah, but most of like my life, Papa had by that time he had the dairy operation, and Larry and Joanne and my grandma run that, and he would be out. He had the timber business, and he did. Brandon alluded to it a minute ago about he probably had a little pull with some people and stuff. He was a guy that his life was really clean and it was good, and people respected him because in the timber business, that's a business that back in those days, I'm sure that there was probably people that might say, we're going to do this on the.
There were probably some dishonest people,
but McKelvy had a good.
It'd have been a very, very easy business for somebody to be dishonest in.
And he had a great reputation for it. And he did Uncle Johnny's farm over there, and over there by where my dad grew up. And Very fair. If you tell him to go in and cut I don't want to go anything any smaller than 18-inch, they weren't going to do it.
Yeah, they were good sized stumps. I pulled Johnny off of several of them later in life.
Kyle's pulled Johnny off some of them back in there. Uncle Johnny, he had a few. He's pretty rough on stuff too.
He could balance a Massey Ferguson like nobody else.
Yeah,
I'm
right
gonna tell you.
up on a stump.
But yeah, he was a neat man to grow up around.
It might have been something about that generation, because I remember Papa getting that forward to straddle on one time, Dad having to drag him off. So
McKelvy and them over there at their place, their house was a very modest house that I grew up in, or my mom grew up in, and they had an outhouse back in the backyard. I remember going back there. They had a smokehouse built right behind there. You go in there, there's meat.
It's just a generation, right?
Yeah,
Well, that's why you do it.
And
one thing I've always wondered. So there was how many girls? There was four girls, and tell us their names.
My mom's Joretta, and then there's Jolene. She's the second girl, and Joanne, who's dead now. That's Stephen and Leslie's mom, and she's the one that my granddad lived with after they moved over there, and he built that house for them. And they all lived there after my grandma died. And then Joanna, she's the youngest one.
So where did the Joe come from?
Yeah, where did the Joe come from?
I don't know. I never knew that story. My sister is Sarah Joe. My cousin, she's Laura Joe. They love Joe. They love Joe. I don't know where it come from. They called them the Joe girls.
Well, I've joked with Larry. I said, you reckon if McKelvy and them would have had a boy, they'd have named him Joe?
Joseph.
Joe Retta told me one time that her mom, just like any typical mom, would go to holler for one of them, and maybe she was going to holler for her, and she'd say, Joe Retta, finally get to Joe Retta,
Yeah.
And she said, when I named my boy, she said, I said to myself, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to name them close enough. Mm-hmm. So she's got a Brian, a Jason, a Kevin. She said, you know what? Said I'd go holler for Kevin. I'd say Brian, Jason, Kevin. She said, it's not about she said, it's not about the names. It's just.
Yeah. That's what Dad would do. He'd go, Brian, Kevin, God. Get here.
Whoever it is, get over here.
One of you, come here.
Yeah.
So you talking? Larry's your uncle, right?
Larry Smith is Larry's wife was Joanne. She was the third girl that was born. Yeah. And when my grandmother, she got killed in a car accident down on 185 in August of '87, and my granddad, man, he had a lot going on. He had a lot going on. And Larry and Joanne was living down there on 185 there. His parents was Harold and Jenny. Right, they lived down there in the house in front of where Joe Monroe lives today, Joe and Paula. And they just picked up, and they went over there and they built a house. And they used probably a lot of rough sawed lumber. I know that's my granddad.
A lot of poplar.
Yeah, Larry told me one time that whole house was rough sawed poplar.
Yeah.
Jason's house is, isn't it?
Jason's house, I'm sure it is. The house that Brian had that burned last year, it had a lot, and that's why it probably burned so fast. And it was burning hot that night. Yeah. McKelvy, he had that sawmill down there in front of Bill and Jolene's. He'd seen some tough times, and he was pretty thrifty on some things. But when it come to dirt, now if it was around him, he liked to have it. He had a pretty good sized farm.
He didn't have all his eggs in one basket either.
No,
he was very diversified.
He had several hundred acres, but I mean, he was somebody that his life before us was really good, and he was helpful. He loved to help people in his community, and he received help from people in his community too. But he's from a different time.
I've heard Larry tell, you remember the 4-wheel drive David Brown they had?
Yeah.
Well, it didn't have a loader on it its whole life.
Right.
It started out with they had built a push bumper. The reason they bought that tractor, they had I think some kind of old Gleaner combine, and they had corn in those bottoms, and it was real muddy one fall, and they couldn't get it out.
Yeah, push that combine.
And so they was pushing that combine through those bottoms with that 4-wheel drive David Brown. Now, can you imagine having to ride that David Brown tractor and catch all that chaff and corn stalks and everything coming out of the back of that combine?
True.
Larry, I saw a guy one time. Larry was standing there. He had a hole in his pants.
Coveralls, and they were raveled out about that far. And it was cold, and he had long johns and everything else on it. And I saw a guy light those. The Ravelins.
Oh my gosh!
and there was flame. I mean, it's on the back of his thigh area.
Somewhere thereabouts, and before he realized there was flames coming up past his shoulders, because we were standing in front of him when said guy lit the ravelins, and there's flames coming up past his shoulders before he realizes. And I think said guy put him out because he was afraid he's going to just burn plumb down. You could be sitting next to said guy. I'm not real sure.
I have set a few fires in my life on people.
I've
burned some ravelins off people.
I'm not sitting next to Smokey Bear here, I don't believe.
I burnt Estel Lindsay's coveralls one time, and he had a Milky Way candy bar, and it melted it plumb down.
Oh, my God.
It plumb down, and I had to put him out. He didn't know it.
Old Larry, when I was a kid, we'd be over there. Of course, Larry, I guess he just was, he worked, he worked a lot. He was out a lot. I can remember, Larry was the only person in my family growing up that I could ever remember even like car racing. And we'd be over at Mama and Papa's on Sunday if we was having a little family get together or something. And there was a chair that sit over there in the corner, and you could see the television set. And Larry, he'd loved what he said, we'll turn it on that racing. And he'd get to race, you get to watch it, and it wouldn't be 5 minutes. He would be totally out. That man just fall asleep instantly. And we'd immediately turn the channel back on. We had about two options, You had channel 13,
5 and 13,
and 5, and 4 on a really good day.
Yep.
You had maybe
turn that antenna just
right.
If
you turn it just right.
Or if the rain was coming in. Sometimes if the weather was.
I also saw a guy stick a cattle prod to a gate that Larry was hanging on to one time.
I might know that guy.
And pulled the trigger on it.
Larry
can move.
That was when the barn was still standing too, and he kept saying, "Hey, must be a wire in that barn touching that gate." And he'd grab that gate, and I'd ease that prod down there and hit it, and he'd say, "Hey, there's got to be a wire in that barn touching that gate, or something shorted out in that barn."
So we messed with old Larry, and I put a cup of water on a door down there. Do you remember that?
Yes.
One of these styrofoam cups like that.
No, it's a coffee cup. It's a glass coffee cup with a handle on it.
Is that what it was?
It was, yes, I remember.
I put it on the door, left that door about, and these are tricks that I learned from Marion.
Yeah.
This is because Marion did this to me.
Blaming it all on him.
I'm going to.
Okay.
Yeah. He was a bad influence.
Okay.
So I set that glass coffee cup up there, and we leave, right?
It was down there. You remember when he built the little building to keep his tools in across the road over there when I think they tore the barn down or something? He built that little building.
Yeah.
So that building wasn't finished out on the inside, so it's like sitting on the inside of the door sill, and there's a string run down looped around the knob.
Yeah.
Full of water. But it's a glass coffee cup, keep in mind.
And Larry's poor dad got it.
Harold walked in the tool shop.
He was 85 or 90 or something like that.
He was an amazing man.
Yeah, but he got that glass coffee cup.
To the head.
To the head. I'd set it up for Larry.
Oh, he got it, huh?
Yeah.
Harold.
Larry said, gosh, oh, boy. He said, you're going to kill an old man down here.
Harold was, he was a very decorated person in World War II.
Really?
Oh, I didn't know
that. Believe it.
Didn't know that.
Man, that house that they lived in down there on 185, that him and Jeannie lived in, man,
it
had
house was gone
swords
now. Yes,
and all kinds of stuff where he'd served. He's in World War II. Larry and, of course, they milked over there. They took care of everything for McKelvy. Brandon was talking about where he used to raise, he had hay back in there, up there on top of that hill. We used to, with Papa, when it come time to, everything was square built. You square built everything. And when you would try to come off that hill, that's pretty steep.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty steep. And we would have that log truck, Clovis is what he called that log truck.
A white one?
Yeah. It's the white one or the brown? Yeah, it's the white one, I guess. But it had, you could put 144 bales on that thing. But when you got it to the barn, you had to throw the top run off. Larry always hated that. But that's what you did. You tried to get 6 or 8 more down there across that last run, and you had to throw them off
to get it under the barn.
Yes, and then when you got down to the end, you threw them back on there, throw them back up in the loft. But that's just the way their mentality was. Gosh, we can get just a few more here.
Yeah,
we're gonna do it.
Make that trip.
We're gonna make that trip
one last time.
And boy, if you ever pop a clutch on that thing, he'd confound. What are you doing up there? Because when I was little, that's what they'd do with me. I wasn't big enough to handle a bale, and
of course they're on the end of their logging journey, or Larry's logging journey. McKelvy was done gone by then, but they had old Blackie. You remember old Blackie? Mm-hmm. And Larry would load it with logs of evening and leave at like 3:00 in the morning to take a load to Litchfield before traffic got out because it drove so bad, you know. But yeah, old Blackie.
Yeah, McKelvy, he would stack them on there. Man, he put the logs on a load.
Yeah,
I mean, they just, I guess,
and stuff really
maximize the fuel trip or something. Man, maybe I remember thinking, I hear my mom even say, "Gosh, Daddy puts a lot on there." But yeah, it's a good place to grow up. It's good people, you know, down there in Big Reedy, and like I said, we was talking about a while ago with Dad. The very best years professionally of his life was right up here.
Well, Charlie, y'all may live down there, but y'all, I mean, he was always, the whole family's part of Sunfish, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows you. Everybody knows the family, and
you know,
Charles was
this
a
community's
good
been really good. This community's been really good to our family. And my mom, she taught school at Sunfish. We was talking the other day, and she was talking. She said the first year I ever taught school, she had Zach and Jeff in class and up there, and she taught a couple years, and then she actually went back and taught one more year by the time Brian was little, and then she went back, and she did not go back to teaching school until she had to go back to Western to get 2 more years in and start teaching at about 39 years old.
I had Miss Joretta in 6th grade,
Yep.
and she
I
told
had her in
me
middle school.
she told me that I was the first student that she had Dad and Mom, and then me as a student. Yeah. She said she'd had like dads of students and moms of students, but because the way her time fell at Sunfish, and then I guess did she teach Kai Rock too, or what?
Yeah, she taught at Kai Rock, and she taught at Kai Rock 1 year there. She had
so she had Mom up there, Dad at Sunfish, and then she had me coming through middle school.
Yeah, I had her in middle school.
I had her 2 periods a day back then.
I don't remember what she taught though in middle school. Is it
English?
She taught remedial reading when she first went over there, and then she moved into. But there toward the end, it was just like something new about every year. It seemed like
you might have had her just for just like phonics or something, or
yeah,
alphabet.
Yeah,
beginners.
Yeah.
Beginner's alphabet.
Yeah, it's something pretty simple, I'd say.
Yeah. I said
Buffy and Mac. Did y'all read?
I tell you this. I mentioned Gary there a minute ago.
I know you.
I mentioned Sack there a minute ago, but I remember we was talking about when Roy bought down there next to Dad. It was about 83 or something like that, I guess, somewhere around in there. Gary got Gary to put a fence up that run all the way between, and that's a long, of course, Kyle's got all the measurements over in his office, but it was a fence. It was a fence, man. I'm telling you what, that thing was as tight as a banjo. And, I'd go out there some, but now Jason was out there all the time, and everybody was there hanging out with Sack because he had, he could talk stuff, and he was just fun to be around. And I was thinking about that after I said that a minute ago. Gary's one of these people that could take you, and if you'd work a little bit with him and stuff, he could take a Coke candy bar and he could get mileage out of it.
Oh yeah.
He just had the gift, man. But I can remember that when I was a kid when Roy first moved down there.
Now I think that fence is what I've heard. So was there a certain point, like when you guys were growing up, you couldn't ride your bikes across or something like that? Have I heard that? Have I heard Jason tell that?
I don't know.
So I think maybe there was like a certain distance or something like that maybe y'all couldn't be out toward the road or something like that. And Charles had said, don't go past this. And so Jason and Brian, they's on their bikes riding. Have you heard him tell this? Oh. They're just riding, to beat 60 and maybe going to feed a bottle calf or something, I'm wanting to think.
Or at the old barn.
At the old barn or something like that. And so Jason said, I stop where we're supposed to be, and I see Brian just, keep going. And come to find out later, the chain had come off his bicycle and he couldn't stop. Couldn't stop. Yeah. But let me tell you, this is how much he thought that, Charles's word was law. Rather than going past where he was not supposed to go to, Jason said all of a sudden he just makes a right-hand turn and just bam into a gate. And Jason said, I run over there and the bike's over here and the handlebars is bent and Brian's laid out. He's like, what happened? He said, I couldn't stop. And he said, well, why'd you do that? He said, I wasn't going past. I wasn't going past wherever that
That's
was.
law right there.
Just again, if you'll take a gate before you'll go past the imaginary line. I mean, those boys respected Charles.
Yeah.
And when he said something, that's what he meant.
You better. And
I might have got that a little bit wrong, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
I promise you that's.
Yeah. I'll say this too. When I started working over at the bank, and there would be people come in, and there's people that would come in there that this community especially, there was so many people that I was a young man and I started lending money, and they'd come in there, and there's people give me the opportunity to wait on them, probably because of my dad.
Yeah,
they wanted to do business with him.
They wanted to because they liked him, and they thought, well, if he's anything like Charles, then he's all right. And I can't tell you how many conversations started out with, man, I love Coach Alexander. I remember one time he busted my hind end. That's the way it would start. But they still had love for him. There's a story I remember, and it was like Steve and them. It was about that age group coming through there. Something had happened, and I believe it was Dude Simon. He had been sick or something. He was in the hospital, and they had won this tournament, and they had gotten the big trophy. And Johnny was on that team, his youngest son. And Johnny told me that Dad let him take the team trophy to Dude. And he will still tell me that story. And he'll just about tear up when telling me that story. And so...
Is that when Dude was probably having his throat trouble?
Yes, it was in the mid-'70s, I believe. Yeah,
Dude,
it was sometime in the mid-'70s.
But I think he fought that for
a while.
But it was something happened. So it makes you feel good that people love somebody like that, but man, I there's a lot of stories I could tell, and some of them I probably couldn't.
So you said he's been gone 2 years.
He died on February 2nd in 2022.
So that was kind of COVID wrapping up, right?
Yeah. He had he had dementia, and he had a stroke on Christmas Day.
So here's a question for you. You may not know the answer, but just guess. How many people you think came to the funeral home?
Oh no, it was wild, man. It was.
That's what I figured.
We
were gone somewhere, and I remember when he passed away. But I thought, I bet you can't get in that place.
We had he was open 2 nights, and then which a lot of people don't do that anymore. When you're 80-year-old, you've outlived a lot of your friends,
right?
But it was really quite an outpouring. But when he had told us before, at one time, said, I've got some friends I'd like for you to ask them to just walk with me. Brandon was one of them.
Yep. Very honored to get to do it.
Yeah, he loved Brandon. And, but yeah, it's,
I don't want to make light of Coach being in the funeral home, but I do have a little bit of a story about that. A lot of people, for some reason, get me and Jason mixed up.
Oh yeah,
they think that Jason and I look alike.
I can see that.
I can't tell you the times that people have came in.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't tell you the times.
It's the convertible.
I can't tell you. Well, Jason said he's got way more hair than I've got, which I don't know. We'd have to get the measuring tape out on that.
We might have to get him up here and compare.
But so on a typical day, there might be somebody trying to give me a fox or ask me questions about their beagle hound.
Yeah.
There was an auditor one time that was doing work for Kevin. We're on opposite ends of the courthouse, and so she's working over at Kevin's office, and then she's over in my hallway, and she told Jason, she said, "You're everywhere." She said, "Everywhere I go, I see you." So anyway, over at the funeral home, and as you said, as soon as you got to the porch, you're in line.
Right.
I don't know if people can get a mental picture, but at Patton's funeral home, you're outside, you step up on the porch. There's a long hallway going down by the, where you would eat or take a break. You make a left into another room that they usually use. And so it wrapped all the way in there and then come back down the hall and then back up to the family. And so I'm standing in line, just waiting to get up to see the family. And this man that's been a lifelong neighbor of theirs, I see him heading toward me. And I know the guy, so I think he's just going to come over and make small talk, be in line. And he comes over and he said, "Has the line been like this the whole time?" And I said, "Well, as long as I've been here, it's been like that." And he he breaks down, he starts crying, and he puts his arms around me and he said, "I loved your dad." And so I don't want to embarrass him, and I just say, He was great. but why he would have thought that Jason would have been standing in line at the end of the line.
Yeah. It is unbelievable how many times
And
it
so
happens.
I get up there and I got to tell Jason about it. And so it made
You had a little bit of a laugh
it just
in there.
it just made it like
Charles would have wanted to
he
laugh.
would have enjoyed some
Oh
of that.
yeah. No,
Lighten things up.
he'd laugh and cut up and stuff. He had a good laugh.
Oh
man.
yeah, Charles was.
Which I think I told Kyle this one the other day, being we're on a funny about Charles, but the bus driver training video, did you ever see it?
Was
So-
he on it? I mean, was it one they made with him?
They made it with Charles. And when I was in their training, they would say, here, you can take this home. And it was about doing your pre-trip. And so it was Charles laying out, you need to do this, you need to do this. And it was on VHS, and you could take it home, pop it in your VCR, and watch it. And if he said ribbits one time, he said it 35. Because when he was doing the inside of that bus, every time he walked
Ribbits.
by a seam,
With a
he
bead.
said that you needed to check all the ribbits in the body of that bus.
Yeah, he was a predictable kind of guy too. Kyle was talking the other day. Now, when Kyle was little, he'd always wanted you. If you was going to be involved in something that he was going to be involved in, he wanted you to try to learn it the right way. And he'd always and he had these words he'd use. And like, if you was going to shoot a basketball, you had to learn to
gooseneck it.
gooseneck it. Your hand had to go like this. He wanted you as the form, and that he'd use that line all the time. He showed Kyle. What was it, Kyle?
Well, we was playing, of course, class tournaments.
Oh,
We was
yeah,
talking about county tournaments, class tournaments coming up.
Big time.
The older
Got
kids
to
would
beat
come-
Brownsville in track meet.
Hey,
and
the
stuff.
older kids would come down and practice
Field
you up.
day.
That's what I did with
Field
Jeremy
day.
and them when they in school.
So we were practicing. It was classroom would be against classroom. I'm in third grade, and I'm coming down the wing on the right side. I pull up for a little 10-foot jumper. I mean, just sweetness, bottom of the net. And I'm doing that Richie Farmer back pedal, I'm feeling good. This is about 89 or whatever it is. Coach, he blows the whistle, stops the game, comes over there, gets me around the shoulders and takes me up there. He said, Kyle, you see that square up there on the backboard? I said, yeah. He said, it's not there for decoration. Use it when you're on the wing.
He's wanting to bank it in.
He want me to bank it,
Just stick it and bank it in.
That's right.
Kyle's over here talking about field day, talking about playing ball. I was always the tug of war. I was always the one on the end of the rope tug of war. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I
wasn't a
remember him
baller.
standing in the old gym at Kyrock at the free throw line, showing us how to gooseneck that ball
Yeah.
and how to spin
Follow
it
through.
backwards.
Yeah.
And and he said that you had to follow through. I remember him doing that. And so about 6 or 8 months ago, my stepson's playing, and I had him out on the concrete, at the house, and I was showing him, and I told him, I said, we had old coach at Kyrock where I went to school. I told him your dad's name because there's a park down where we're at that's the Charles Alexander Park. And that's a different Charles Alexander, of course. But I think about him every time I go by. But I was showing him, I said, you have to put the arm up, and you got to follow through. And I said, if it helps you, point at it, And he would teach
It was
us
the
that.
gooseneck.
Yeah.
That was his line. That was one of those predictable lines. But yeah, if you was gonna shoot basketball or something, and you're gonna get close, you got to bank it in, and you got to gooseneck it.
you got to bank it in. It's not up there for decoration.
Right. He was good.
Down to third grade, fourth grade kid there. Yeah.
We used to have those tournaments, and Kyrock School, I don't know if you all remember, had a second level
Oh yeah.
in the gym.
That's
It
where
had-
Coach's office was up
Yeah,
there.
had an office up there, had a record player. He'd go up there and start and have him exercise videos.
Oh, I wanted to go up there so bad and see what was up there.
Yeah, I
I
remember getting to go up there once, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, but
Jump rope competition.
that was his place. That's it.
And that's where he finished up at. He went to Kyrock in 80-81 school year. That's the year I started school. And I remember I rode school bus, and back again in those days, man, he was when he drove that school bus and kids got out of line, he'd pull. I remember right up a road up here on the right. Him stopping a school bus one day, and he whipped two kids that were high school age kids. I mean, he spanked their
Do
end.
you remember the kids, who they were? We don't have to mention names, but
Yes, I do. One of them lives on that road, and the other one grew up down near Stewart Road.
yeah.
Yeah. And they were great. They were big boys.
Yeah.
And but those guys loved him.
Yeah.
So
I remember when he left over there, we got Joe. What was her name?
Goretta. Van Meter.
Yeah, that's who we got.
She passed away a while
She
back.
did.
Yeah.
She sure did.
sure
it's
did.
tragic.
But so she came in probably my third.
It was it's my fourth grade year. He was there until my third grade year. I bet you just had her 1 year. I bet it was your fifth grade year.
Well, I didn't go to school there in fifth grade. I went to Brownsville.
Oh, okay.
So it had been my fourth grade year.
Well, I was really
But she'd
sure
make
that
us
he came
exercise, and as a fat kid, I did not like to exercise. Similar as today, you know. I
still don't like it.
Still don't like it. And, if you see me running, you run too. We'll talk about why later.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember she made us exercise a lot harder than he did. He wanted us to play ball and wanted to teach us how to do it, you know. Teach us the right way and how to,
Well, he made it fun.
Right, yeah, it was great.
He made whatever you were doing to exercise fun. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to go out there and exercise.
Right. You was talking about Coach being particular about things. That made me think, this is probably the last story I got of him. I don't have a lot of good coach stories like you guys do, but I've heard Jason tell this one. Leaving the TV on all night was a no-no at your house.
Yeah.
You know, that was just a waste.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it was a World Series game. I believe I'm telling you this right. And Coach, was telling Jason, get that TV off and get to bed. Jason, I'm going to finish watching this game. He said, well, if you watch that game, you be sure and get that TV off. So I think he goes on to bed,
Oh, I know this story.
And if you know it, tell it, because I might be getting part of it wrong.
No, what happened was he watched. He fell asleep or he went to bed.
And Coach, it wakes up in the middle of the night with the alarm clock going off.
Yeah, he thinks
He hears this,
and his station has went off. The lines on the TV. He's never thinking to look at that, and this sound is going off, and it's woke him up, and he's going like, he gets the alarm clock, tries to turn it off.
And it won't turn
Won't
off.
turn off. And it's the TV, but he never looks at the TV. And he finally just jerks the thing.
The alarm clock out of the wall, wraps the cord up, heading to the front door to throw it out the front door.
He realizes it's TV.
He realizes it's the TV. And there Jason is asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
I reckon.
He was a pretty deep sleeper. When he come out of that sleep, he was wild.
Why can't I get this alarm clock to go off?
There was things that,
But he just did not want that TV left on all night.
I'll tell you one more on him, and there was some things that it's setting the back was something that would just set him off. He would just get anxious about it. He wanted everything to get done. Because you get out there and you gas him to them plant beds and you get everything ready. And as much as he loves sports, I remember one time Brian was in 8th grade and Jason was in 6th grade. I was in 3rd grade, and we'd had the little basketball camp over there. Mm-hmm. We got over there that morning. We won every division in 1-on-1, 3-on-3, and Jason won like 4 awards. Brian won 3, and I won 3. We cleaned house. We got home, and Dad, he couldn't even. Mom had went and got us, and he was so wound up over that he didn't go over there that morning. He was just trying to get everything ready. So as soon as we got home, we was going to change clothes, start setting the back. And Brian was trying to tell him, say, we want, show him what we want. And yeah, that's good. Get your clothes changed. And Brian just stopped him. And Brian was a very respectful kid. It's like Kyle was talking about the milk deal a while ago. He loved Dad enough. He really deeply respected him, where Jason and I would probably try him a little more. And he stopped him and he said, look at what we've done. He said, we've won this. He said, I thought you'd be proud of us. And he stopped and he said, you know what? I am proud of you all. But let's get our clothes on. Let's get over there and get started.
Let's get to the
And he was serious about it for a minute. But he, bless his heart, he'd get on that tractor and he'd get that ground. It's just like powder.
Yeah.
And he wanted to set them rows. He wanted them rows to be good, but he could not drive a straight road to save his life.
Really?
Oh my gosh! He'd be looking over his shoulder, make sure everything's good, that the water's coming out and the plants are getting in the ground good. And of course, I followed behind the setter till I was 20-year-old. I had ground leased up there off Willard Woosley up there on top of where Bobby Woosley, going to college, helping pay for my college. Have the lease on it and still having to walk behind the setter. But I remember one day we was out there and they never would let me ride the setter, even when Sarah and I got big enough, because she was a girl and she's going to do anything she could ride the setter, and I'm still goober walking behind the back. So I'd get bored.
Sarah, right? Still thanks Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I mentioned you again. I'd get so bored out there because nobody ever missed a plant. That old Brandon, the old tobacco barn out there. It used to be red, and I'd get so bored, and I'd pick up a dirt clod if I could find a good dirt clod, and I'd launch it, and it hit the side of that barn. Boom! I just enjoy it, and he was on edge. Hey! Throwing them dirt clods back there. Go to the end, turn around. I get bored. There's nobody missing any plants. Nothing for me to pick. A few minutes, I'd grab me another dirt clod up. I cut drive of that thing. Boom! Around the side of that red barn. Hey! Did you hear what I said? You do that again, I'm going to bust your end. And invariably, at some point, you know how it is.
Oh, yeah, you have to throw one.
Let's just see if he will.
Yeah, I had tried.
He got off that tractor one day, man. I'm telling you what, and that belt, he started to take that belt, and it looked like it was a mile long. He's just wrapping it up, and son, he lit me up. I did not throw any more dirt clods that day.
We were talking at the office the other
Get
day.
on edge, man, over sitting in the back and stuff.
Every 35 to 45-year-old boy around here has heard belts coming through a loop.
Oh, yeah.
You know what that sounds like. Yeah, it's got its own sound.
Yeah. And his line was, I'm going to make a believer out of you. I'm going to make a believer out of you. But, yeah, it's those, you look back on things like working, and I feel sorry for kids sometimes that they don't have that. A lot of kids don't have that experience. Tobacco was Christmas. We worked all year to get to that.
Yep.
And Kyle and I talked about it. When Autry's bunch would come down there and help us, they stripped tobacco for us. We'd laugh, get in there in that tobacco barn. It'd be cold. You'd go out there when it's raining and miserable, get up middle of the night, go book it down so it'd be ready. Man, those were good times.
You didn't realize it, but boy, looking back now.
There's good times.
Yep.
And I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I had, because I feel like sometimes I wish I had more for my kids to kind of do, and because I want them to have a good work ethic and be productive men someday.
Yep.
But I'm thankful for where I grew up. I'm thankful for the people I grew up around, and they showed us the right way.
A lot of good people in this
They showed us the right way to try to, and working is a good thing.
Growing up on a
no
farm.
matter what anybody says, and no matter what people believe in our country today, it's good to be a worker and have pride.
Right. You don't have to. I tell my kids, you don't have to worry about anybody taking care of you. You can take care of yourself. You figure out how to do it. You do it yourself.
Yeah. Well, my kids have got upset sometimes because they're having to haul square bales, or they're having to do this, or they're having. And I sat them down one time and I told them, I said, look, I want you to be able to, when you get out in the world, if somebody says, can you do this? Yes, I can do it. No matter what it is. I want you to be experienced enough that if
confident.
Somebody comes at you, and I don't care what they go do, but they've always got something they can fall back on using their hands to do.
Right.
Growing up on a farm will teach you way more than agriculture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Life lessons.
Life lessons.
Do you all listen to Mike Rowe any? The Dirty Jobs guy?
I know who you're talking about, but no.
Yeah,
He got a podcast you listen to?
Well, he does public speaking events and stuff. YouTube him sometime.
He does have a podcast.
Does he?
I've not listened to a lot of it. I did see it the other day.
He's all about the trades, right?
Yeah.
He's all about you don't have to do this to be successful. If you're willing to work, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
I've got enough sense to know this. Even the things that I don't know how to do, I know the people to call that can help me do it.
Right.
Brandon has been one of them for a lot of years for us and stuff. But
yep.
Well, we're gonna have to close this one out. It's been a really good one, Kevin. We're glad you got to come see us and sit in on this.
Yeah,
I'm glad to do it. I appreciate you guys. I think it's great what you're doing. You're getting stuff out there.
Well, we want to get the stories told, right? It ain't all the stories. There's no way we could tell all the stories.
No, but if we can just preserve some, if we can preserve some and make a few people laugh and brighten a few people's day, so. You did such a good job on the last one. I'm going to let you throw a shout out to our designer. And then while we're into that, I am going to tell a story on my wife on this one.
Are you sure you want to do that?
Yes.
I've already been lined out at home.
No, I've
already cleared
on her. I've already cleared this.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Hayes Farmhouse Designs. which is on Etsy and Facebook, correct? She does banners and shirts and does our artwork on our Facebook page.
Custom designs.
Yeah, check it out. She's good. So let's hear the story.
So we have, and I've cleared this one with her.
Are you sure?
Yes, I have.
Because we don't want her to send us a bill like she could.
Right. Well, this is very true. But
send it to Brandon. Brandon's paying.
So we found out in the last little bit that my wife is allergic to menthol.
The cigarette?
She can't do Newports or what?
Like
Cools. Uncle Gene smoked Cools.
She put one of those cooling patches on her shoulder, and when we figured this out, it looked like a sunburn, like blistered up. She went to the doctor. They discovered, and she said, "Well, a lot of stuff makes sense now." She said, "You know, if I chewed gum, my stomach was upset." This and that. So she's ordered some special toothpaste that don't have menthol, and it's not coming in yet.
Menthol's in a lot of stuff in life.
Yeah, a lot of things.
She doesn't smoke. I just aggravated.
Right,
Me
a lot
too.
of
I was
things.
joking.
So
Don't be mad.
So
Sorry.
her new toothpaste has not come in yet. And I said, "Well, what have you been doing?" She's like, "Well, I just been using regular." And I'm like, "Well, how bad is it?" And she said, "When you brush your teeth or use the mouthwash you use," she said, "is it like eating really hot peppers?" And I said, "No, absolutely not." She said, "I thought that was normal for my whole life."
Really? So it just been sitting her on fire and she didn't know?
Yes. She said, "I wondered," she said, which she's always said that I'm the roughest person brushing my teeth than anybody she's ever seen. Like
you're wire brushing, right?
Like I'm getting them, And she said, "I wondered how in the world you could stand that with the way mine feel when I'm just brushing normally," because she said, "It is like I'm eating the hottest pepper in the world."
If life is fair, Bub will be allergic to something like that one of these days for feeding me that cheese.
What cheese?
I don't know. It was ghost pepper, habanero,
So
ultra
I put
tarantula
ghost,
pepper
No,
cheese.
hold on.
So
Hold on.
I hope he's allergic to
I fed
water
you
one of these days that burns his mouth off.
I have fed him hot cheese multiple times, but the last time it was ghost pepper cheese, and I put it on his cheeseburger over here. We had a little get together, and I gave it to his daughter to give to him because I said, if you give that to him, he'll have to eat it.
Yep.
So
then I got my gallbladder.
So everybody knows.
All this is Bub's fault.
So everybody knows Brandon has an iron gut. Brandon can eat the hottest buffalo wings at BW3s, right? I mean, you fed me one time down there. I thought I may pass out.
The boys at work say that one flavor I eat all the time is like eating creosote.
Mango habanero is what you fed me, and it is bad. And so you like hot stuff, right?
Yes.
I mean, you always have.
Yes.
And so you're feeding Kyle, who had a gallbladder hysterectomy.
Yeah. Who doesn't like anything hotter than ketchup?
Right.
I mean, I don't even like hot stuff. And he's
hot sauce.
Yeah, he's putting. It was something different than ghost pepper.
Ghost pepper was on the burger. I gave you some
from that Amish bunch down there.
That's scorpion cheddar.
Yeah, with the real with the real spider.
Heard of that?
Well, I'm gonna say, Kyle,
those
is
Amish
funny.
just killed the spiders and
it's
mixed it
funny
up in
he
their
got your
cheese.
daughter in on it. I mean, I do see the humor in it, right? I'm sorry you're having medical issues out
write
of it.
that down. Put Jeremy on the list now.
Well, I want to tell Brandon thanks for the meal tonight.
The meal was
fantastic.
Don't be advertising that too much. Any guest we have will expect it. I told Dale, I had to go help Dale put a water heater in today, and I told him I had steaks laid out, and he said, "So Kevin's getting steaks. So you're gonna have to tell Dale you got steaks, but he got help putting a water heater in."
The only request I made for Brandon was keep this trip up here condiment free. I do not like mustard. I don't like mayonnaise, and I occasionally get pictures from Brandon and Kyle of people taking Duke's mayo showers and just
that one was
unreal.
A mayonnaise eating contest.
I think we're gonna see if we can get Dukes to sponsor this one for
unreal stuff, man.
Hey, has this been a lifelong affliction, or is it something
It's just gotten worse. Yeah, it's gotten worse in my 40s. I'm not joking you.
Can you tell about the mustard real quick?
That thing
on that cheese? Yeah, on the Velveeta single, or will that make you too bad to tell it?
Tell it. Yeah, I was over at work one day, and I'm in there in my little office. For those people that are listening that wonder sometimes why I ain't out front, I'm back there working. I promise. I go to work 6 days a week, so I'm back there, and I have there's a little drawer, so pull out drawer. I never pull it out, do anything. I just throw my keys in there, and so I'm in there one day, and I reach in there to get something, and I drag my left hand through mustard.
In the drawer.
In the drawer.
How does mustard get in a drawer?
Huh?
How does mustard get in a drawer?
It was on a piece of cheese.
Ask this cat right next to me here. So I drag it out, and I'm like, gosh, I'm about to pass out. I'm sweating.
You got woozy.
And I'm trying to wipe it off. I wipe it on my top of my desk, and I can't even get it off of there. It's stained it.
To this day, it's stained.
It's still stained. And I look down there, and there's mustard on a piece of Velveeta cheese that's probably been down there for several days. And I asked Kyle about it. He said he
didn't do it.
He threw Jeremy Spainhauer under the bus, and of course Jeremy, I don't know. I don't know who really did it. I think Jeremy did do it. But
I'd say Kyle might have put him up to it.
Oh yeah. Kyle, he's up to no good sometimes. You know how he is. I working with work, and Kyle and I work close to one another. We have a good night.
Oh my Lord!
Oh my gosh! I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave.
Jeremy the Dukes.
I'm gonna leave.
Oh my goodness! Oh, he went full flavor with that.
Oh, that's good.
Just a full squirt of mayonnaise.
Is it on my face?
Yeah, it is. Don't look, Kevin. Please don't look. Oh my goodness!
Was that expired?
No.
Still on the chin a little.
At least he didn't take a bath with it. I'm telling you, I can't even hardly watch that football game. I was scared Kentucky was going to win that bowl game or get in the bowl game this year. I wasn't going to watch it. The Duke's Mayo Bowl. Shout out to Duke's Mayo.
It's gone.
Get this guy some sponsorship down here.
It's gone, Kevin. I swallowed it.
Or Plotchman's mustard. Yeah,
that's the only mustard.
Plotchman's.
Oh, I love it.
That's what my wife said. The little round ones.
Yeah, a little keg looking thing.
Yeah.
Barrel.
You know
That's
what?
what
I
John
tell you how good a
Yep.
husband I am. I will put that on her hamburger,
Really?
and I'm just
Get woozy.
When I was, that's what John A. used at the store down there growing up. But when my roommate in college hated mustard. I mean, he would fight you if you got him close with mustard. And he would not let me keep it in the house.
I'm with him.
That or mayo, he would not let me keep it in the house. I had to keep it, if I wanted, I keep it in my vehicle.
What, he's a bright man. He really is. But I'm not a Dukes. I didn't even. I really never heard of Dukes much till.
It was Hellman's when we were kids.
Yeah, it's Hellman's.
But Dukes is better.
According to Brandon, it's the best.
It is.
Kevin doesn't have a preference.
I promise you, I
He
could
hates
care
them
less
both
about
equally.
both.
Thanks everybody for listening.